finish this, and thinking to myself, what on earth are you doing, offering to speak, and when Roger's only been gone for a month? But I have. So have you put that up, Josiah? I just saw this last night, and I thought that was really funny, It's so true, isn't it? That's just what we're like. We want change, but we don't want it to affect us. Anyway, here we are, and we find ourselves at the end of our month of mourning for Roger, and we will continue to mourn him. But it is time to look forwards and to look at where to from here. First, though, I want to just share with you some of the values and characteristics that came in about Roger after last week's message. So you said he was generous, accepting, kind, encouraging, real, humble, sincere, spiritual, caring, thoughtful, respectful, tolerant, sense of humour, protective, authentic, adventurous, and validating. Sounds pretty amazing. And I know that he had, some of the negative of those as well. But, when we remember him, those are the things that we want to remember about him. So we need to hold those things in one hand while we slowly start to move forwards. But where do we go from here? You see, I know that there are some of us here who'll be feeling a wee bit uncertain and unsure about what will happen next in our church. And that's okay. And actually, we're not going to rush into making any decisions right now. As a board, we've been keeping the church supported and running while Roger has been sick, particularly since about April this year when his health got worse. We're truly blessed to have an amazing leadership team. We all get on well, and although we are very diverse in our personalities and ages and relationships and the way that we look at things so differently, we find that we complement each other very well. We also believe that God has placed us each here for such a time as this. So one of the things that we've changed as a board is our name. You see, the board sounds a bit old school and boring, but we are not either of those things. In fact, we often laugh most of our meetings. We come away with sore cheeks from laughing so much sometimes. So we've started to call ourselves the Kaitiaki. The translation for Kaitiaki is trustee, minder, guard, custodian, guardian, caregiver, keeper, and steward. To preserve, foster, protect, and shelter. And I think this is such a beautiful description of what the Kaitiaki do. If you look up the meaning of a board, it says a long, thin, flat piece of wood. Or to get into a ship, aircraft, or other vehicle. Or to live and receive regular meals in a house in return for payment or services. That's not what we are. We are Kaitiaki. So we had talked about changing and renaming our church for a while. But as we did talk about that, we realised that Te Atatu Baptist describes us really well. So we didn't look any further at that. But what we did have is a good look at a new logo. We wanted something that was more modern, but we also wanted something that we could use going forward with any of the developments that we might do. So here's what we've come up with. And we've had a chance to discuss this at our meeting. Oh, we will have a chance, to discuss this at our meeting after the service. And I did mean to put some blank paper into your newsletters today so that you could write down any questions or thoughts that you might have. If your brain is anything like mine, I have a really good thought, but within about 10 minutes, probably not even 10 minutes to be honest, it's gone. So if you have things that you think you might want to discuss at our quarterly meeting after the service, please write them down. So we've been giving this a test run over the last little while. This is the logo. When we put up all those logos earlier in the year, this is the one that was by far the most favoured. So the first one is for Te Atatu Baptist, and we've just made an extra little change in that by making the T in Atatu a cross. When I first showed Roger this, Joe, are you able to zoom in on this? When I first showed this logo to Roger, he loved it. And he said it's amazing, you know, you've got the sea and the sky there with the blue and the little splash of yellow which represents the dawn. And then he said, and you've got the cityscape there. And I'm like, there's no cityscape there. He's like, yeah, there is. So, I'll just take this off. If you look really closely, right up at the top, above the yellow, where there's the dark blue and then it changes into the pale blue, it looks like a cityscape along there. Can you zoom into that, Josiah? Can you see that? When you're at home and you've got this logo on your computer, zoom in, and it looks like our city. And I know it's probably a little bit hard. You can almost even see the Sky Tower in it, if you know what you're looking for. I didn't, but, you know, I just saw that, even with his eyes that weren't working. So the next logo that we have is the one for Third Ground. Third Ground, which is out there, stuck all over the top of our panelling. Thank you, David. Yeah, it is promotion. But we do have one that says Third Ground. So it's the same basic logo, but it has different words on it. So when people see the logo Third Ground and they see the logo Te Atatu Baptist, they'll make a connection between the two eventually. And the third one is for the meeting place. So we've just quickly got Anya, who has been so amazing. Where is she? She's in with the baby. Anya has designed all of these logos for us, and she's been so amazing that, you know, we've been able to say, can you do this? Can you do that? Could you fix this? Could you change that? And she has been so gracious. So she just quickly whipped this up for us this morning. We want to encourage people to feel welcome and at home here. But sadly, there are more negative connotations about the church in the community than positive ones. And I'm not just talking about our community or this church, but the church throughout the world. When we had the baptisms in May and June, so many of the whānau who came to see the baptisms talked about the fear of coming into the church and being struck by lightning. They were worried about what they should wear to church. Josiah was just telling me before, and I didn't even check with Ash if I could say this, but I'm going to anyway. She's my daughter-in-law. She has to love me. When she first came to church with Josiah, she stopped outside and was too scared to come in because she hadn't been to church before. But she had this negative picture in her head of what it might be or what might happen. But here she is, eh? How did a church become a place that people were frightened to enter? I am certain that Jesus was all about people coming to him just as they were. Not all dolled up, not all cleaned up and well behaved. Just coming in to a building, to a place where they might meet Jesus. Jesus came to save the lost, not the well-dressed. He came to break down all the rules and regulations that were so prevalent in the Old Testament. So we want to make a start. We want to start to make a definitive difference between the building and the people. We, what are we, tātou, are the church. We are Te Atatu Baptist Church. This building is the building that Te Atatu Baptist meet in. If we didn't own a building, then we might have to meet in a primary school, like many other churches do. But that wouldn't make us a school. We could be a school. There's so many teachers. Hands up if you're a teacher here. Look at us all. Oh, you're not a teacher. So many teachers. So if we ever need to be a school, we can be a school. So if we rename our building the meeting place, then people will feel a lot more comfortable coming here for services or for any meeting or event. So again, if you've got thoughts about that, write them down and we can talk about them at our quarterly meeting after the service. We want and we need to hear your thoughts about this. I'm also going to talk about the property development in our members' meeting, but you need to know that there are no definite decisions that have been made about this. Nothing is set in concrete. We are making progress on talking with the right people though, and that's important. So that's just a bit of a teaser to get you all to stay for our meeting if you want to hear more about that. In the meantime, we need to do some rebuilding of us. Our numbers have dropped significantly since Roger's terminal diagnosis 2 years ago, understandably so. However, we need to change that. We want God's kingdom here to grow. I read an article and it was titled, "Stop Complicating Ministry. The smaller the church, the simpler we need to keep it." Now there was something about this article that rang true with me, and you will know when I get to it what it was. So I'm just going to read you a little bit of it. It says, "Don't subdivide an already small group of people. Get everyone together for fellowship, conversation, prayer and learning." This is not in the article, but you know what we need to do is we need to have some fun. I think we've been in survival mode, but we need to have some fun together. Something like a ball. So David and Mel's are stepping down from the youth leadership that they've been doing here for 10 years at the end of the year. This is a huge amount of time to serve and lead a youth group in a voluntary capacity. In fact, I don't think there's anybody else, David, is there that's been doing it like that for that long. So we're going to have an Ignite reunion ball. It's not just going to be for the Ignite youth though, it's going to be for the whole church. It's time to kick up our heels, as it were. Now back to the article. Want a great kids ministry? Sitting on the grass, colouring on cardboard while somebody who loves kids tells them about Jesus is life transforming. The youth, listen to them, be an example to them. Show up at their graduation, their games, their concerts, and be a soft place to land when they are teased at school, they fail a class, or their parents get a divorce. Families, offer to watch the kids so mum and dad can have a much needed night to themselves. Just another aside from that. If anybody's free on a Thursday morning to come and help at Mainly Music, this term our Mainly Music has grown from about an average of 16 to 18 to about an average of 28. And we've got one mum in particular who has twins. And so she just sits there with her twins on the mat. She can't do what she needs to do with both of them. And so I've been taking one of them. Now, I love that. You know how much I love to hold a baby. But there's so much that you could do. If you wanted and you were available on a Thursday morning to come and help, then we would value that. Back to the article. Seniors, show them the respect they've earned and take time to learn what they can teach us. On Sundays, we don't need fog machines and lasers on stage. Ding. That's the bit that made me think of Roger. Although, if it works for you, go for it. Look, do you know how many times he would say, when we're talking about doing something at church on Sunday, he goes, "Oh, do you think we could use the fog machine? Or do we need the lasers?" Just teach the Bible using simple terms we can all understand. I think we do that. Speak kindly and lovingly to hurting people. I think we do that. Pray for those in need. That is something that we definitely offer. Encourage church members to invite friends. Yes, that's what I want. I want you to be inviting your friends and your neighbours and your family. Sing songs that work in your context. Yep. In short, do the basics in a way that fits where God has put you. For such a time as this. As a church, we do most of these things well. As individuals, to quote Roger, we need to be broken before Jesus. We need to be having honest talks with God about ourselves. We can't trick God like we can trick each other. So if we want to simplify our relationship with God into one scripture, I think it should probably be Luke 10:27. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbour as yourself. And amazing that William would do that song, Jesus Loves Me, This I Know. So simple. We complicate Christianity. We complicate our relationship with Jesus so much. So what does that look like for us as individuals? I think it looks a lot like those values and characteristics that we wrote about Roger last week, and I'm going to read them again. Generous, accepting, kind, encouraging, real, humble, sincere, spiritual, caring, thoughtful, respectful, tolerant, sense of humour, protective, authentic, adventurous, and validating. Let's be honest, those were the things we saw in Roger that reflected God into our lives. He reflected a genuine, unconditional love, which is what Luke 10:27 is talking about. This is the part I find a little bit difficult, because I have to talk about me. So I was called here as a pastor officially, rather than just part of Roger's call. Des and I reckon somewhere around 2007. Now as a church, we find ourselves in a very unique place. The kaitiaki have been talking about how we should or could proceed. We have a few questions that will need answering. One is, do I want to be the pastor here? Another is, do you as a church want me to be the pastor here? These are both questions that should be answered with clear heads, not with grieving heads. I do want to say that the answer to the first question is definitely yes from me. And I don't know what that will look like. It will look different, but that's something that we're working out. So we, the kaitiaki, have talked about continuing on as we have been for the last 6 months. I will continue to be your pastor and work with the team of leaders who serve you so incredibly well. It will be a few months of us pulling together and doing our part to serve God here in this place. We all need to visit the sick, to clean the building, to give financially, to invite our neighbours, to pray for each other and for Te Atatu Baptist Church, to support and encourage one another. So just as we believe that the Kaitiaki are here for such a time as this, we also believe that each of you here today, whether it's your first time or your 3,000th time, you are here for such a time as this. To love the Lord our God with all our heart and soul and mind, and to love each other as well as we can. I just put that there because it says love your neighbour as you love yourself. And sometimes we don't love ourselves very well. So I'm just going to make a little change to the Word of God and say, love each other as well as we can. Sometimes I feel it's easier to love others than it is to love ourselves. So, as William comes to lead us today, I just want to talk briefly about communion. Jesus' love, the love that we've been talking about, was poured out on the cross. But you know what? Lots of people died on the cross. The day that Jesus died, 2 other men died as well. What was different about Jesus is that he didn't stay dead. He rose from the grave and he conquered death and he lives. So maybe as we take communion today, we could thank him for that ultimate act of love, being resurrected. And maybe if we think about the basics, the resurrection of Jesus and loving the Lord our God with all our heart and soul and mind, and loving each other as well as we can make it simple again. And maybe we can make this place, the meeting place, and us, Te Atatu Baptist Church, a place where people feel safe and they know they can just walk in and there's not going to be any lightning bolts, but there's going to be a lot of love. Thanks, William.